Good evening, everyone. Welcome to the Board of Education Candidate Forum hosted by Voorheesville PTA. I'm Jennifer Hampton, and I'll be moderating along with Jen Duffy, who is our current PTA president. I know he's doing a good job. We have 3 candidates for this year for 2 positions on our school board, and all 3 are participating this evening. Thank you so much for taking the time and for being here. For being in concert. We have Tim Kramer, we have Matthew Bergeron, and Kathy Fierro. We appreciate, again, each of you participating. We have a variety of questions representing important facets of school board work, and I will begin with a few questions. And then, again, people have been walking around with cards, Jen's been walking around with the cards. If you have a question that you'd like to have asked, please feel free to write that down and we'll bring it up. We'll take care of these questions as we can. Yeah.
Could you either move the mic closer to you or maybe turn it on right out the other?
Hello? Okay.
Thank you.
No problem. Thank you. Definitely want me louder. Okay. So we are going in random order. I roll the dice on my meeting home. And then we'll cycle through, and then hopefully we'll do it out. Okay, so to get started, we'll be starting with Mr. Kramer. Did you hear me? Okay, first, we'd like to get to know you better. And so first, if you could please tell us a little bit about yourselves and why you chose to run for the board. And while you're answering that, second follow-up is what would you bring to our school board?
Okay. First, I'll start, as I always have to do for my entire life, by correcting the record. The name is pronounced Creamer, like coffee creamer.
I did
Just go with that.
ask that before we started.
Okay. I was born in Detroit, Michigan, where I lived for the first 20 years of my life. I'm the oldest of 6 children. My father worked for Ford Motor Company. Mother was a homemaker. After high school, I worked a series of factory jobs in Detroit and attended Oakland Community College at night, part-time. In 1973, I moved to Ohio, where I attended Kent State University, and I got my bachelor's degree in political science there. In 1977, I moved to Columbus, Ohio, where I attended The Ohio State University and got my master's degree in public administration. Upon graduation in 1979, I took a job immediately with the Ohio School Boards Association, where I remained employed for 19 years, working my way up to become the number 2, the Deputy Executive Director. While living in Columbus, I met and married my wife, Jay, and we'll be coming up on 45 years of marriage this October. In 1998, I was recruited by the New York State School Boards Association to come to Albany to become their executive director, and I remained there for 21 years. I retired in 2019, right at the end of the year. I have lived in Voorheesville for 26 years. My 3 sons, Terry, Mike, and Matt, graduated from Voorheesville and today have very successful careers. 2 of my 5 grandkids attend the Voorheesville Elementary School. In January 2020, I was appointed to fill an unexpired term on the board. I then successfully ran for a 4-year term right in the middle of the pandemic. And I'm here today seeking your support for my reelection, and I thank the PTA for this opportunity. Now, if you want me to bleed into qualifications and experiences, I can do that, or you can save that for another question.
I'm going to go ahead with that now.
Go ahead with that.
We're going to extend on a.
So this is why run.
Yeah.
All right. Well, as I said, I was appointed in 2020, ran during the pandemic. And at that moment, 2 incumbent board members who were up for re-election chose not to run. Cindy Monahan, who was the board president at the time, asked me, could you run? I wasn't planning on it necessarily. I thought the incumbents were doing a fine job, but with their departure, I decided I would run. I couldn't say no to Cindy. The past 4 years have allowed me to give back to this community in a way that's been very personally fulfilling. For 40 years, I talked the talk. For the last 4, I've walked the walk. And it's been such a great learning experience for me. I really feel as if I've been able to be a strong contributor in something that I don't know what else I would do, quite honestly, to be able to offer as much as I have. Serving on the board, in my mind, at this point in my life, is exactly what I should be doing right now. I believe I've been a good board member. I believe we have a good board of education. We have many challenges ahead, and I'd like to continue to be a contributing member of that team.
Thank you. So good.
Hi, I'm Kathy Fierro, and I thank you all for coming out tonight. Can you hear me? Yes, okay, good. I decided to run for the board this year because I'm very passionate about the Voorheesville School District and the students in this district. I spent my 32-year career here in Voorheesville as a Voorheesville elementary teacher. I taught a variety of different grade levels. We used to have a gifted and talented program. I did that for a couple of years. I taught 5th grade, I taught 2nd grade, I taught 6th grade, and I taught remedial math. So many of your students may have passed through during my time there. I retired 3 years ago in 2021, and I missed being part of the school community. And I think that being a board member is basically service to the community. I raised 3 girls here with my husband, Dr. Alan Fierro, who did a short stint at the elementary school in the science lab. And our girls went K-12 through here. They've launched into adulthood successfully. I feel they got a quality education here. I think that, I also, for 21 of those 32 years, I was the teachers union president and gained a lot of skills and insight into the district. I've served on almost every committee that exists here in a variety of capacities over the years. And I look forward to serving the community and serving the students of this district as we move forward. Thank you.
Hi, good evening. Can everybody hear me okay? Great. My name's Matt Bergeron. Thank you so much for coming out this evening. I've lived in Voorheesville since 2012. So compared to my friends and colleagues here, a little bit shorter period of time. But once one moves here, they learn very quickly just how special this community is and all the people in the community are. I have 2 kids in the district. Molly is a senior and Abigail is a sophomore. My wife Erica is an occupational therapist who works with a senior population. I've been practicing law for 21 years. Practice primarily in the area of education. I also focus my practice as well in employment law, as well as administrative law, open meetings law, as well as constitutional law. That is an experience that really allows me to see how school districts operate from both sides, many sides, and it gives me an ability to view things with a multifaceted lens. Over the past several years, I have faithfully attended nearly all Board of Education meetings. And I don't say that as the kids say nowadays a flex. I say that because it certainly does give me the ability to hit the ground, at least jogging, knowing where the district is at in terms of its plans and its policies and its mission. I'm absolutely committed to the concept of public education and that obligation that we have as a society to provide that for our fellow citizens and children, and particularly quality public education that we provide here in Voorheesville, which really does nurture the whole child. Though at times challenging, there are some exciting times in education ahead, particularly just today, news broke that the Board of Regents will be releasing its vision for its graduation pathway requirements. And that is undoubtedly going to require local school district input and work, and that's something that I'm very eager and very interested in becoming involved in. In terms of what led me to run. I had it here on my paper as well, so it's going to sound a little bit redundant, but I really truly do believe that we have an obligation, if we're so privileged to be able to do so, to give back to our community. And now at the age that I'm at, with one daughter ready to graduate, and another as a sophomore, and now the time, the focus, the ability to do that. And I'd like to contribute more. I've already contributed. We now have a school board member on our Board of Education. And I'm proud to say, although, you know, I've been mostly humble about it, that I'm the one who brought that to the attention of the school board. That the law permitted it, and this is something that we should have, and there's no reason that we should not have. And I first brought that to their attention in 2020, and luckily I was able to shepherd that through, and it was on the ballot. We've had that school board member since 2020. At the end of the day, I really do truly believe in the words spoken by Marian Wright Edelman, a profound and well-known activist, that education is for improving the lives of others and for leaving your community and the world better than you found it. And that's why I wanted to get involved, to help my community, my neighbors, and the children of this community. And I'm hopeful that I'll be able to give you more insight into my ideas as we go forward tonight. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, our second question will go first to Kathy. What knowledge do you have of the budget process? And what do you think of the current and proposed budget for the schools?
I have a fair amount of knowledge, at least the most knowledge you can get from the public seats. I have been attending board meetings my entire career and have gone through numerous budget processes. I am in support of this budget. I think it's financially sound. I think we are growing, and so we need to put the resources in place to sustain that growth, and also facilities. When I started here, the transportation situation at the elementary school with the bus garage and the buses was an issue. That's 35 years ago. So I am thrilled personally that we have taken the land that we have, and at no additional expense, because that land we already owned. I think that was a fiscally responsible move. I'm not going to pretend to know more than I do. When you become a board member, there is board member training and there is financial training. And I certainly, that's mandatory, so I certainly taking advantage of that. But I'm quite familiar with the budget process as a whole.
Okay.
Sure. In large part, I'd echo what Kathy said in terms of my knowledge from a public standpoint. Certainly, there are things that that happen in training in terms of the process, but in terms of how it works here, I'm very familiar that input is solicited from various stakeholders, be it teachers, be it staff, administrators, which certainly is very important in terms of defining what your baseline is and what it is that you need in order to maintain your current level of services. I think is extraordinarily important, and it's part of my platform, which is we need to maintain the extraordinary services that we have here in the district and always strive to improve upon them. And then, therefore, there's of course a little bit of a waiting game, because you have to wait on the budget numbers, on the state budget numbers. Or initially, you will get what are called runs from the state education department or the division of budget, based on what the governor is proposing, and those numbers are all but tentative until the budget is approved, which we all know can come well down the line. But what I have seen, and I certainly we give credit where credit is due, that Superintendent McCree and Assistant Superintendent Southern have done a very good job of formulating the budget each year, keeping the public informed. And in terms of the current year's budget, I do support. I support the priorities in terms of increased support for students, And I believe there's an increased math support in terms of increased security and monitoring for student well-being. And with the tax cap, the reality is that there's a certain consideration of leaving money on the table. And the more money you leave on the table, the more it hurts you in the future. And I think that the school district did well by that this year by taxing at a responsible level so that it didn't leave money on the table, so that we can maintain this level of services that we need to keep the bar where it's at here in Voorheesville.
Thank you. What do you see as the primary work of the Board of Education? Oh, so sorry, Tim. I'm so sorry. I'm getting ahead of myself.
Well, I had notes and everything.
And I would not let you waste your time.
I don't want to minimize the amount of work that goes into the preparation of this budget, managing the budget throughout the year. But in many ways, Voorheesville's budget is fairly predictable. We're very fortunate in that way, and we have very good community support. And there's going to be changes to the state foundation aid formula. Count on it. There's probably going to be restrictions on federal funding going forward. But I don't anticipate huge revenue swings that are somehow going to devastate our future budgets. I do anticipate really big challenges on the cost side of our budget. We have high inflation. We all live with it. And in a school district, it drives costs up regarding personnel, equipment, transportation and energy, materials and supplies, insurance, on and on and on. All school districts are facing this, and all school districts are limited as to what they can cut. There are some very strict regulations that require us to spend on certain things, and we need to maintain a balanced school district budget. We're also required to absorb certain new costs, such as those associated with the new electric school bus mandate that's coming online in 2027. That could have huge cost implications for every school district, including Voorheesville. But high inflation also negatively impacts the people whom we serve, our taxpayers, our community. And our job as a board, I believe, is to balance those cost increases with our community's ability to pay. We're going to have to look carefully. We're going to add new programs, new services, new things, new that. I want us to be very careful to looking at cost benefit analysis and get the best bang for our buck. And I think we do a pretty good job in that right now. We're also going to need to be very aggressive in advocating for our fair share of state aid foundation, the state foundation aid, and seeking out targeted resources such as BOCES aid and specialized grants, for example, for the electric school buses. It might not be popular, but as we add, let's say, new course offerings, and I think we should, we might find ourselves having to see, is that something we could offer online, virtually, rather than putting our costs into having to deliver that in person. I also think that there are some partnerships that we could develop. School districts are always a little anxious about forming partnerships. We do a good job under the BOCES umbrella, but singling out, we'll partner with Gilderland in this, we'll partner with Bethlehem doing this, or something like that. We're a little awkward and a little careful about doing that, but I think partnerships and consortiums are things that we need to explore in order to keep costs down.
Okay. Thank you. Thank you. Okay, Matt, this question will go to you first, and it's what do you see as the primary work of the Board of Education?
I think the primary work and responsibility of the Board of Education is to play an active role in overseeing the management of the district, which largely is in the hands of the superintendent. And when I say management of the district, really the question is, are we doing our best job of educating and respecting the well-being of all our students? That doesn't mean that it's the board's job to micromanage it. certainly that's not their job. It's a volunteer position. It's without pay. And I don't think that we could if we wanted to, but we should be wanting to. It's our job, and I'm answering the question quite literally, and I think technocratically nuts and bolts. I could give you a philosophical answer, but I don't think that that's what the question is looking for. I do think that the most important responsibility of the school board is to actively engage in hiring, and we of course already have a superintendent, evaluating and overseeing management and operations of the school district, and ensuring that communities' questions get answered to the extent that they can be.
Okay, thank you. What's his
Why do you elect a school board? I think there's actually 5 areas or categories of interest for a school board to focus in on. Number 1 is to support and build the educational program and to press for good results. It's one thing to say we got a great program. Well, prove it. Let's make sure that we are delivering on what we say. So educational programming that's going to help educate and develop our children well and develop them for their next stage in life. Number 2, we need to assure this community and the staff and everybody involved with this school district community that we have a safe and productive school environment. And we do that through policy, we do that through oversight, we do that through questions. We're on behalf of the school district, we're asking a lot of questions associated with the environment of the school district. We need to employ a well-qualified staff in every single position. Everybody is well-qualified for what they do, and I think we do a pretty good job in that right now. We need to oversee this budgeting process we were talking about and make sure that we're spending money wisely. And we need to represent you, the community. This isn't our school district, it's your school district. And so there are things that you may want, things that we can't deliver on, things we can deliver on, but we need to listen to what you have to say and respond to your interests. I have always thought that the kind of have a ledger, if you will, two-sided ledger, and the board belongs on the side that is talking about what are we trying to accomplish? I say to what end? Why is that a priority for us? What's our rationale? If I vote yes for something, you should be able to come up to me later on and say, why'd you vote yes? And I better be able to respond in a way that shows that I demonstrated what I know, that I did it legitimately. The third thing is how much in the way of resources are we willing to expend in order to get the job done? And the fourth question boards of education need to address is how well? What is our expectation for success? How will we know if we've got there? What measurements will we put in place? So what, why, how much, how well are the questions I am going to focus in on as I look at these program areas.
Thank you.
So as at a very basic level, a Board of Education member is a representation of the community. That's why you get to vote. Our responsibility is to be stewards of the public education for our students, your tax dollars, to make sure they're being spent in a fiscally sound manner, and as Tim had mentioned, getting the best bang for your buck, and the best educational outcomes that we can provide, as well as overseeing the physical plant, the property the district owns, the fields, the satellite fields, the path, all of these things to make sure everything's operational and we're getting feedback on all the aspects that it takes to run the district day to day. So it's basically we're representing you, we're being fiscally responsible with tax dollars, we're trying to provide the best education for the students in this district, and we need to make sure that we're maintaining the property that the district owns.
Thank you. Okay, next question will be on Mr. Coogan. Next question. How do you balance your ability to represent the community while keeping the needs of the superintendent, teachers, and students also in mind?
Well, the needs of the superintendent teachers, can you repeat
The
the
need,
question?
the needs of, so how do you represent the community
Yep.
and, keeping the needs and interests of the superintendent, teachers and students?
Ask a lot of questions. I am very respectful of anybody who comes towards me, with offers of advice, declarations, questions, whatever those might be. I am a good listener. I want to hear what people have to say. I can't necessarily tell you that I will agree with you or that I can satisfy your concern, but I will definitely want to hear what you have to say. I will tell you that in requests or suggestions that are made toward me, my experience has been that almost invariably, these tend to be administrative in nature. They really don't require board action. So oftentimes what I'm doing is reaching out to the superintendent and saying, this has been brought to my attention. It's something that your staff probably need to deal with. And I will certainly be a conduit, and I'll be a consensus builder. If there are things that require the board to look at it, I will do so. But primarily, I would say that when issues come towards me that are emanating from the community, I will probably be sharing those with the superintendent and looking for a way in which we can address those needs properly.
Okay, thank you.
I would agree. I think that, communication and transparency are the key to kind of keeping everybody happy. I think that there are many things that come to you as an individual board member or even as a union president or a teacher that you can handle on your own, perhaps, but you may have to refer them to the proper channel. If it's a sports issue, it may have to go to Joe Sapienza. If it's a transportation issue, it may have to go to the transportation office. So there are things, though, I'm always willing to listen. I think my career has shown me to be a good listener, and I try and problem solve to the best of my ability, and I have no issue bringing an issue forward or a concern forward to the entire board. The board does have an email. The superintendent is part of that email, and you can email your concern to them, and then it will be addressed in whatever the proper channel is. But I would always want to encourage anybody that's part of the school community, whether you're a community member, a staff member, to feel free to talk to any of us. I think that's important.
Thank you. Yeah.
I agree. And a couple of the things that at the risk of putting too fine a point on it, I'd say that I think one common misconception is that school board members can act on their own, and they can't. School boards can only act as a full body. And so I really do like the word, and in fact, I was going to use it myself. Board members are conduits. We're here to listen. We're here to learn. No matter how old you are, we're never too old to learn as human beings, as board members, as parents, as community members. And along with it is, in my mind, the concept of curiosity. Okay, now, for those of you who didn't learn it from the first time from Ted Lasso, I did. The quote, "Be curious, not judgment." And that is so, so very important, is to approach this and other aspects of life with an open mind, and to then act as a conduit to guide people in the right direction in terms of where they need to or can direct their questions or their concerns. Board members have no power to make promises. They have no power to act on their own. They are one voice of seven, but together they act, and they act within the best interests of the school district. And I think that that's the best way that we balance our role as school board members with those who are the professionals in our school district, which are the teachers, the staff, the administrators.
Okay, thank you. Okay. How do you gather information other than through the reports that you'll get from the superintendent? Kathleen?
I believe in talking to people. I believe in face-to-face communication. If there is an issue or a concern or something we're going to act on, I'm going to make sure that I have all the information that's available to me. I'm going to talk to the people involved, and I think that's how you reach the best decision. I'm not gonna make decisions in a vacuum or just on what's on the paper in front of me.
Thank you.
The risk of being redundant, learn. There are going to be things that we're not going to know. There's no shame in asking questions. And so we seek out that information from people who have that knowledge and they have that information. Whether it's a source that you would think would be obvious or, you know, quite frankly, in my life and in my work, I've often found that the least suspecting sources are the best. And so those are the kinds of sources where you get your information from. On top of the information that's given to you by the superintendent or other administrators. I think that in terms of the types of sources, one that really glaringly comes to mind is people who've been in a position, whether on this board or whether on another board. There are resources to be tapped through New York State School Boards Association, where you can gather that information, whether either directly from them or from the members that are in similar or in cohort-sized school districts.
Thank you. Okay.
Would you like me to answer that too?
Yes. Too many check marks.
I'm very fortunate in that I have the time to devote to learning about issues that are confronting us, big or small. I read about education issues constantly. It's a sick obsession, but it's what I do for a living, okay? I have decades worth of contacts with people throughout the country who I can call upon and ask, you ever dealt with this? What would you do? People who have no vested interest in our outcomes. That's a very healthy, neutral point of view sometimes to have available to you. Of course, I can always turn to my old employer. I know everybody there, or at least I used to, but I know the higher ups there, and I can reach out to them and say, hey, I need to talk to somebody about this. Do you have any information on this? Do you point me in the right direction? They have a monthly newspaper called On Board. If you've ever seen this, this has chock full of information that is very timely, very well written, very well documented. I'm very much proud of this document, and I use it for this publication. I use it all the time. They have a daily news clipping service. It's from papers all around the country, mostly around New York, that give us information of what's happening in other districts. So that helps. They have podcasts. They have a very highly experienced and knowledgeable staff, workshops and webinars. In fact, on Wednesday, I'm attending a virtual webinar on artificial intelligence and its implications for board policy. So tons of stuff is out there available to you if you have the time and the inclination and the resources available to you. And I do.
Okay. Given the research on the negative impact of smartphones in school, would VCSD consider, what was your view on going phone free, having some sort of policy about cell phones? Many schools are moving in this direction. Bethlehem is now phone free, and it's in its first year right now. So we'd like your perspective on having a cell phone policy. Our first answer is no.
Parent of two teenagers, I know firsthand, and I'm sure many of us do that.
Could you speak up, please?
I'm sorry, I apologize. As a parent of two teenagers, I do know firsthand the role, the significant role that cell phones play Yeah, and I am aware, I think the recent book, I have not had the opportunity to reach it, to read it yet. But gentlemen, The Anxious Generation by Jonathan Haidt, I've yet to read it. I'm eager to. And that I think is generating a lot of discussion. To get to your question, I think first people we have to ask are the teachers and the staff. Is this something that how is this going to impact in the classroom? The reason I say that is because the discussion I've had with my kids is that my understanding is that smartphones are themselves used as a tool in the classroom. And so we have to work back at this. If we're going to implement some kind of policy that restricts their use in the classroom, then that necessarily is going to restrict their use academically. If they're actually being used as tools in the classroom, then that potentially could interfere with the learning process. So those are discussions that I think that we need to have. I'm aware of the various kinds. Lock it up at the front door, and you don't see it again until for the rest of the day. Versus it just needs to be off during the day. I think that if this is a discussion that teachers and staff, along with the administrators, believe it's worth having, but I think it's a discussion that we should have. By my sitting here saying that this is a discussion that we can have, that's a discussion. I have not honestly staked a position on this issue, but the important piece of it is that you're willing to listen to stakeholders and to have the discussion, find out what the impact could be, and to go from there.
An outsider looking in when it comes to this, I don't know to what extent this is a huge problem in our schools, in this school, but I have read data that suggests that if somebody is on their cell phone online for more than 3 hours a day, that has negative implications for their health, their anxiety, their self-awareness, their attention span, a variety of things. I've also read in that same article that on average, students are using their cell phones 9 hours a day. And there is an obsession. They're losing sleep. There is other sorts of things that are occurring that are not healthy for a maturing mind. I would think if I was a teacher that if I had students in my classroom with cell phones on, using them, texting, emailing, whatever they're doing, it would be hugely distracting. I believe that if we are preparing the kids for an education that prepares them for the next stage in life, focusing on what is before them now is very important. If I had to vote on it at some point, if a recommendation came forward, we would like to put a limit on cell phone use one way or another, I would probably vote yes. But I would want to make sure that I was in line with my fellow board members, and I'd like to know more of what the staff would have to say about that. They might be in favor of it, they might not. And it's their classroom that we're trying to protect.
I've read a lot about cell phone use and social media in general and the impact on students' self-esteem and anxiety levels. And as I think everyone in here knows, we were having an epidemic of anxiety in our young people. I'm not sure banning cell phones is the answer. I know that it's been a continuous discussion up here at least the high school level. Some teachers have kids put the phones in a basket on the desk when you come in. Other teachers are actively using cell phones as part of the classroom participation. And so I really think it would have to be a discussion among the staff of the three schools. I don't think it's such an issue, or at least it wasn't when I was at the elementary school. But I imagine middle school, high school is more of an issue. But then, I look at how adults deal with cell phones. I don't know if you've been out to dinner lately, but you see a couple sitting at a table and they're both on their cell phones. They're not even interacting with each other. That drives me crazy. And I would also want to hear from the students. They're the ones who are impacted, who feel like they're missing out if they don't, have that constant stimulation. And I would hope that we could find some solution that would make everybody happier, at least able to live with that. But I think it really needs to come from the ground up.
Thank you. Our next question we didn't have here. And the question is, what are your opinions about schools and libraries banning books? Do you believe books should be banned that have characters who identify, for example, as LGBTQ+, racial issues, or religious groups focused?
I don't ban books. I don't believe in the book ban. I don't know enough about the exact books we're talking about. I have not read any of these books that are so offensive to some people. I've seen articles where they have a picture or a listing of 8 or 9 books that have been most commonly banned around the country. They have subject matter that could be offensive to certain people, perhaps not age appropriate. Okay, I'll give you that. I do think that parents have a responsibility to understand what books their kids are reading and to maybe control that if they feel that there is a problem here. Kids should read the book. But your kid might not be appropriate for that book, or maybe mine is. And I'm okay with that. And so I think these community-wide bans, closing on, shelving books forever, I don't think that's a good idea. I would be opposed, typically I would be opposed to any book bans.
Thank you.
I don't agree with book banning at all. I think I've had the luxury of a wonderful public education, and I think that I've read many challenging books that stretch my mind, and expose me to things that, depending on where you grow up, you're not exposed to. At the same time, I know we have people who feel differently. And I know that we have a video policy that, if you want to show a video that could be controversial, parents are informed and they have the right to opt their child out. I think that might be an option. But I think the exposure to different people, different worlds, different values, with the appropriate discussion to go with that, can be a real mind-opening experience for a child. And I think that's what public education is all about.
Thank you.
Just about 2 weeks ago, the Commissioner of Education issued a decision reinforcing the fact that the banning of books based on content and ideology is antithetical to students' rights and to parents' rights. And I wholeheartedly agree with that. Students have a right to information. And as so aptly put by Mr. Creamer, you certainly as a parent have a right, and I'm talking about library books, because they are different than curriculum based books, but library books, as a parent, you have a right to restrict your child's access to whatever book that you deem ban-worthy in your household. But you do not have a right to restrict my child's access or another person's child's access to a book that they, in Kathy's words, will expand their horizons in their minds so that they can become familiar with a world that exists outside of the bounds of these walls. Absolutely not. We have a policy that covers it for review of challenges to books. We have one in board policy. I have every faith that it will work as intended. And certainly as a board member, I would not support any restriction on access to library books based on content which is strictly the Constitution.
Thank you. On a related note, we have a couple questions about your perspectives on curriculum. Questions relate to your opinions about teaching students about sexual health and reproduction and negative historical events, controversial such as the Holocaust and slavery. To address those questions, and we'll start with that. Oh, sorry, Kathy.
I think it's knowledge. Knowledge is power. Education, the purpose is to impart knowledge to students. And there are some families where they're very comfortable talking about sexuality, and there are other families where they're not so comfortable due to a variety of reasons. Also, I think that it's important that we expose kids. We have a health curriculum here. We have health teachers here. I think they're qualified to teach that subject matter. And if there was somebody who, for religious reasons or some other aspect, felt that they wanted to recuse their child from that, then I would expect they would have that option. But I think we need to educate children about life and the things that they're going to experience in life. And public education is the way to do that.
Thank you. Yeah.
I'll work backwards. There is no reason why we should be in any way sanitizing or removing facts from our history curriculum. As the adage goes, if we don't learn about history, we are doomed or relegated to repeating it. And I often hear the word uncomfortable. Well, good. Some history should make us feel uncomfortable because that's what makes us learn. And straight facts, okay, is what I'm talking about, are not something that our teachers, our professionals, our pedagogues should be told that they cannot teach in a classroom. Because never again means never again when it comes to many of the atrocities that have happened in our history. And they should be taught, certainly in an age-appropriate manner, but there's no reason why our curriculum should be sanitized of history. In terms of sex education, well, I heard sex education, correct? Is that the question?
I'm sorry.
Sex education was the first part of the question?
Sex education and then negative historical.
And I've dealt with the negative historical aspects. The other thing that I would add to that is in terms of another piece of my priority, another one of my priorities is civics education and media literacy. And we cannot accomplish those things unless we truthfully teach history and put it before our students so that they can learn what we've been through as a society. In terms of sex, I can't believe in 2023 we're having a discussion of wanting to restrict things that are age appropriate, sex education. It seems to me that a discussion that we should have already had many years ago, and yet we still have it again today. These are the things that in an educational setting, that children taught by professionals that were entrusted with our children should certainly have the right to teach and are mandated to by state law. That's another thing that I think this discussion is not taking into account, is there are certain requirements that are set forth by state education department, and that's what's being done. Thank you.
Okay. One more.
Would you like me to answer that one?
No, no, yeah, please.
There's a saying, the ship has left the dock. We were just talking about what's available online, social media, and we're going to restrict what we're going to teach in the classroom. As soon as you say, we're not going to teach that, we're not going to talk about that, guess what? It's all available. somewhere else, outside the classroom, in a way that I can't necessarily control. I'm not saying sky's the limit, throw out everything, no restrictions on what we put before kids, but acknowledge the fact that the access to information that they have today is way beyond what when I was a kid, and probably when all of you were growing up as well. We need to help them understand what's available to them. We need to have them know what the expectations are, what healthy habits are, things of that nature. Anything we could do to help direct them in the proper way. But that access to information is always going to be there. I have a liberal arts background. I would certainly, and I'm a curious person, and I want to know more information, and I expect that most of the kids in this school likewise would want to know these things. And I think it's our duty to make sure that if they have questions about sexual relations, sexual health, and things of that nature, that, or historical facts that are somewhat negative, let's have that conversation. Let's talk about that and see if we can they can better understand how this affects them and the impact it's had on our history and on our lives. So I would say I'd lean towards candor and openness more than restrictions and closing things down.
Thank you. What ideas do you have to enhance the safety on our school campuses? We'll start with Matt.
Do you repeat that question?
What is your perspective on the safety of our schools and ideas that you'd have to enhance safety of the school campuses?
Number one, I think that in its current budget, the proposed budget, I think that the district, the current board has made a very good choice in terms of going forward with a high school, middle school monitor, who would have the sole job of monitoring what's going on and to serve, purpose of de-escalation if necessary. My understanding is that person would have a law enforcement background. I think that certainly is a good step. Second of all, I don't want to minimize the impact and the importance of encouraging our kids and students to speak up. And in recent incidences, in many cases, if not all, these things have been brought to the district's attention by students. And I can't help but think that back when I was in school, that's something that may have been ignored, would have been pushed aside, would not have been brought to the attention of an adult for fear of being labeled a snitch or something like that. And I'm so incredibly proud of our students for when they see something, they say something. And that might seem small, but I think that we need to continue to encourage that, to have our kids and our students to speak up when they see something, because I do think that contributes to safety, and it's extraordinarily important, and it builds character. I can't tell you how many times my daughter has told me, well, I saw something and I said something and I reported it, and it really does make me proud to know that there wasn't a sign of regret in her face. Not a sign of regret, not a sign of remorse. She did the right thing. And these are the values that we need to instill in children, in our kids, and continue to, because they're clearly already doing a very good job. I think that in light of some other events, I think I would fully support a full sweep or review of our buildings to ensure safety and privacy of staff, in terms of where things could be surreptitiously placed. This is the day and age that we're in of advanced technology and maybe not so advanced technology. So those are some of the immediate things that come to my mind. Sorry if I ran over.
Thank you. Everyone else too.
This might be a community forum topic. I don't think we have a huge problem here. I worked in school districts all around the state, 2 different states, and there's some school districts that have serious safety problems, serious ones. I don't think we have those kind of problems here, but if people are feeling fearful, they feel that they are in danger, they don't know what to expect, they're not sure if somebody's gonna look out for them, that's a problem. I appreciate what Matt said about the decisions we made for this upcoming budget, because we did talk about school resource officer versus a monitor versus mental health counselors, things of that nature. And I think we found a good place in the middle that is going to be a good starting point for us. We want to make sure that there are places where people can go and report or talk to somebody or know that they're going to be safe and sound. Somebody's watching over them, and we'll do everything we can to protect them. And I think we do a pretty good job in that regard. I would be careful in suggesting that everything that happens here is unusual and abnormal. I think it was in the letter that came out after this swastika incident, where it talked about we're a microcosm of society, and we are. These kinds of hate crimes, these kinds of hateful messages are happening all the time, everywhere. We see it on TV every single day. And we have a nice little situation here if we can protect this. And it's going to be a high priority of mine, and I'm sure other members of the board, to make sure that we offer an environment that's safe and healthy and sound and nurturing. One of the reasons I came here, I came from a school district that had 13,000 students. And I grew up in a district even bigger than that, the Detroit area, that was very dangerous compared to this. I would tell you that this is a very wonderful little haven we have here that we got to maintain. We're blessed by being here, and I want to make sure that that stays in place. I think we're on the right track.
Thank you.
I think safety is probably the number one concern. It's our obligation to keep our schools as safe as possible. I guess I'm going to wait and see how this fall monitor person works out. I think it's a good plan, but I think we will have an obligation after, even while it's happening, to just assess, is it working the way we think it should? Are there tweaks we could do to make it better? But I think it starts with, as both gentlemen have said, with making students comfortable sharing information that they know. Because often social media is a way that kids know that something's happening, or they hear a concern, or they see something, and making them comfortable enough to tell an adult. I also think we're a small district, but that doesn't mean things can't happen here. But we're small enough that with the amount of staff, the staff-student ratio, and the amount of support people we have, including guidance counselors and deans of students and social workers, that we should have a pretty good handle on the pulse of the students. But not everything is students, right? So sometimes, like we had a recent incident at the elementary school, and I think those things, I looked at that as an outlier situation. It's unfortunate that it happened, but I think that how the district responds to those type of things is also important, to make staff in that situation feel that the district is doing everything they can to prevent that from happening again, and offering whatever support is needed to anybody who's impacted. But I think I would start the year, they have grade level meetings, talking to kids every year. It's the message needs to keep being repeated. If you see something, say something. We want you to feel safe. We want you to support your friends, but we also need to know if there's something happening that you feel would be unsafe. So I think communication, both with students and staff, and then having regular check-ins with staff in the positions, like, as I said before, guidance, deans of students, those people, to see, is there somebody who may need extra support that we can provide that for? But it's definitely should be, I think, the top priority of the district.
Thank you. Okay, our next question, we'll go to Taylor. How do you account for, and do you have ideas for how to combat the administrative turnover that we've been seeing here at Voorheesville for the last few years? And second, with that, our administrators used to attend board meetings, and as you know, are no longer doing so. Do you think that they should be back at attending board meetings?
So with the first one, we need to hire the right people. And I'm going to take a little bit of credit here. We were entering into the high school principal search, and I suggested to the superintendent and to others that we should sit down with staff and community groups and ask them what they felt were the issues that needed to be addressed, their expectations for that high school principal, and the qualifications they felt need to be sought in a high school principal. And I had the honor of being asked to facilitate those conversations. And I did that at the high school, and I also did it amongst the middle school, during the middle school search process. I think they resulted in a better idea of the profile of what we're looking for, more accurate expectation. The information that we gathered informed the questions, the reference checking, the interview process, all of that, so that I believe we found some good candidates for both the high school, the middle school principal, that will be successful and will stay for more than a year. That's the hope. I think we did a good job. I don't think we did any of that in those other searches where we brought in the high school principals prior. This time, I think we laid the groundwork more solid. I'm happy about that. You had a follow-up question in there? Did I get that?
Follow up with about,
No, you asked, could you repeat the question again, please?
yes. How do you account for, and do you have ideas to combat administrative turnover? And then the second question was
The board meeting.
the administrative.
Okay.
Yeah.
In my experience here, administrators, at least the last 4 years, I haven't seen them attending board meetings. So that was prior to. Okay. But they'd be welcome. I wish they were there sometimes, and I think they are invited to come in when they are, I'll say, an issue is on the agenda to which they could speak. But yeah, when I ask about it, I think that there is some sense that, well, that's time that in the evening that they're doing something else, maybe back home, personal time. The expectation is not there that they attend. I know in some districts, the administrators always attend the board meetings. But I could see if you're there and you're not really on the agenda and you're not expected to really say anything or do anything, it would become a bit tiresome. So that's really not my call. I guess that's kind of an administrative call of the expectation. I know when I was working for an association, the expectation was that I attended a lot of meetings where I was a potted plant. I didn't say much, I didn't do much, but I learned a significant amount from those things because I was trying to progress in my career. If somebody's not planning to become the superintendent someday, they might be satisfied in not being at those meetings.
Yes.
The administrative turnover is a very concerning issue. This current senior class, as I'm sure Matt's daughter can attest to, has not had the same principal any of the 4 years they've been here. Prior to that, we also had interims and turnover. We haven't had a steady principal since Mark York, which we're going back a while. I am not as concerned with the hiring process, although I think that is valid. And I think there should be representation from all the various stakeholder groups in the school community when we are looking for a new position. But leadership is so important to the functioning of a school, and the relationships that the students and the staff have with the school leadership is so important to moving the school forward. When you have an interim principal, as good as they may be, and I understand the current one is good, he's not there to do future goal setting or look at additional coursework we could offer or any of that kind of thing. He's there to just kind of keep the year flowing, he or she, in this case of the he. My concern is after we hire them. I'm concerned because we've had such a high turnover, and it makes me question why. When we hire a teacher, we have a mentorship program, and that teacher is assigned to another teacher, and they're mentored throughout the year. And about it could be how to make copies, it could be report cards, all the aspects, all the facets of the teaching role. I wonder if we have something like that for administration. I don't know. But I think we need to look at how we're supporting the person once they're hired. A principal's job in today's school is much different than it was when I was in school, say. Much greater responsibility. It's really an intense job. And I would want to make sure that people have the support they need. And whether it's, future coursework, professional development, whatever they need, if we feel that that's the candidate for us, then we need to support them long-term so they stay. I just am concerned about the number of people who've left here recently with the kind of milquetoast reason of they left for a better opportunity. I question that. So that was one of the reasons that I wanted to be running for the school board, actually, because I think it's detrimental to the school to have that kind of turnover.
I agree, and I'm going to start with the question of why. That's what I think is the most important question here. And I can't answer that because I am not in executive session. Neither is Kathy been in executive session. And while Tim has, he can't discuss those things in public, and I respect that. But the reality is that, with all due respect, I think this question of, well, let's get stakeholders in the room and figure out who the right candidate is, I think that puts the cart before the horse. The last 3 candidates we've had here, at least the last 2 in the high school, have been here for a year or less. And so to Kathy's point, we have to ask the question of why is that? What can be done? Why are they not? Is it truly their decision? And if it's not their decision, is it a view of administration that there's something that can't be fixed? Well, after a year, I mean, you have a probationary period of at least 3, if not 4 years. That's time that you have to work with the administrator to make it work. And I have to wonder if those questions are being asked and whether or not there's a full-throated request that all of these different things be explored in order to create that continuity in administration that students and, quite frankly, staff and teachers need so desperately. And so not only asking questions, but following up on questions. If answers to questions don't make sense, then we need to follow up on those as board members. In an executive session, you have a right to do that. And so it's extraordinarily important, and it seems odd to say, what can we do? The answer is, I don't know, because we don't know what the root of the problem is. This is something that can and is discussed behind closed doors. I'm not questioning that, but I think there needs to be a bit more assertiveness in terms of why there is this, after 1 year, as Kathy put it, milquetoast reason of I'm moving on. This seems to be the place that everybody wanted to land, where everybody wanted to be. And now my understanding is when we have a search open up, the applicants are few and far between. That cannot continue to be. In terms of administrators, not teachers. And I'm happy to be corrected on that, but that's my understanding. Thank you.
Okay. This question will first be ended. Each of us has experiences, roles that we take on. Parent, teacher, administrator, advocate, professional, leader, which informs our perspective. What would you say to someone who claimed that you are biased toward a particular group?
I was expecting that question. I don't have any bias. I've had a lot of roles in my adult life, and I feel that I look at any situation for the best possible outcome. I'm not looking to personally benefit from any decision I make, and that goes back to my teaching, that goes back to my union presidency. I think that as a person who's lived in this district for almost 38 years, I've been involved in this community outside the school, and that community involvement, I've served on the zoning board, the conservation board. I'm currently the chair of the planning board for the village of Voorheesville, and that informs my decision making because I understand the community and what they value and what they think. My years as an educator, there's been a huge shift in education from when I started in 1989 to when I finished in 2021. But it was all a learning process. I have experience with senior parents and what that takes. I've spoken to the senior citizens in the town of New Scotland as part of my campaign, because I think they're often a forgotten group of people. But they still have interest in the school, and I value what they have to say. So I think I just try and take all the information I can from all the variety of sources and experiences I've had, and I try to do the best job I can. And I think my legacy, I think, shows that I've done that. And I expect to continue to do that as a board member.
Thank you. Matt?
And just so I'm clear, the question is,
The question is, each of us has experiences and roles that we take on. We're parent, teacher, administrator, advocate. For some of you, professional. What then these things inform our perspectives? What would you say to someone who claims that you are biased toward a particular or against a particular group?
I'm going to put a different phrase on this because the way I'm hearing this question is the way it's been put to me by a select few, the phrase conflict of interest. Whether we want to call it that or we want to call it a bias, short answer is I don't have one. And I'm my own person. Where I work, in my experiences in life, I do those things because of the interests and the values that I hold, not the other way around. Any decision that I would make as a school board member would be governed by my integrity, my values, what's best for the school district and the law. And so certainly there's no bias in the colloquial sense. There's no bias in a formal sense. If there were an actual bias or conflict, I would do just what many board members have done, as I witnessed them do over the last several years of attending board meetings, and that's to recuse from a particular role. I witnessed it. At least two different board members have openly said, I'm going to abstain from this because of A, B, and C. And in at least one or two instances, it's been because of their employment. And that's precisely what the law contemplates. So having certain personal values, mine personally are favoring a full, robust, taxpayer-funded public education system, which our state constitution requires, and the right of individuals to join and participate and negotiate through labor unions, for rights that have been protected in New York State since 1967. Those are personal values that I bring to the table. And quite frankly, those aren't conflicts of interest or bias. Those are personal values. And if someone does not value a robust, free public education and the right of individuals to join in and negotiate to collective bargaining units, then they simply shouldn't vote for them. But those are some personal values that I bring to the table, and most certainly there's no conflict of interest that would interfere in any way as defined by school district policy and law, which I have a copy of with you right here. There certainly is no conflict of interest or bias.
Yeah.
As a board member, I feel it's my obligation to represent the entire community. I personally have no membership in any single organization, and I'm not here for any personal gain. I am no longer affiliated with the New York State School Boards Association. I haven't been officially in their employ since the end of 2019. In fact, our organization, the New York State School Boards Association, had a policy that no staff member could serve on a board of education because it could be perceived as a potential conflict of interest. And we didn't want anyone to think that there was some special access to NYSBA resources because a staff member was on that particular board of education. I have no relationship with any organization that does business with the district. And if for some reason I was somehow possibly compromised, I would feel an obligation to discuss this potential conflict with my fellow board members and with the public, disclose it. And through that proper disclosure, if it was appropriate, I would either abstain from the vote, or, this is my definition of your recusing, or I would recuse myself entirely from the vote, as well as from any discussion leading up to the vote. That's how I would do it.
Thank you. Okay, Matt, you'll be receiving the next question. As costs rise, what should we do about salaries, one of our biggest initiatives? And with that, how do we attract and retain rates that the ones we have?
What do we do about salaries?
What do we do about salaries? How do we attract and retain our staff?
Well, the reason I'm hesitating because it's a little more, it's a complicated. Salaries are barter. That's a simple answer. So to sit here and say to a board member, what do we do about salaries? The superintendent negotiates, board members do not negotiate, Voorheesville, there are no members on the negotiating committee. So you have the superintendent and council, which negotiate with the union, to the extent they're unionized. What do we do about salaries? We negotiate as required by the law, and the parties reach agreement, and it's that final agreement which ultimately the school board votes on. You know, certainly the district's position at the bargaining table is going to be informed by funding and its budgetary needs. But I hate to be a little pedantic about it, but when you say what should we do about salaries, they're negotiable. They're mandatorily negotiable by law. The school district has to negotiate, and what we do about salaries is what comes of those negotiations.
Yeah.
That's not wrong. This is a collective bargaining agreement that mandates that the school district has to pay teachers by a certain amount, and we will negotiate that contract. There are people in the community that do not understand how that all works, and that becomes difficult. For example, this week, I was asked more than once, what are these contingency days? And I had to explain that we, under contract, have to pay X. We're only allowed to pay for X number of days because that's what the state requires. And if it doesn't snow, those days are made up, or given, if you will, elsewhere. And for a lot of people who are in different types of employment, they don't get that. They don't understand contractual situations, they don't understand tenure, variety of things like that. But that's the law, and that's the rules, and it's common, what, 99, maybe 100% of the school districts statewide. So I think we work with lawyers on both sides to make sure that the contracts are negotiated in good faith. We have to be obviously very careful to make sure we stay within budget. I know that sometimes when these contracts are rolled out and they're X number of years in advance and you see a percentage increase per year, some people will say, boy, I would love to give that. Well, honestly, when you get down to it, I do believe that for what we expect of our teaching staff, our support staff, our administrators, we get a pretty good bang for our buck. And I don't think that these contracts are out of line. I know that a lot of work is done to making comparisons with like districts within our region, within our athletic conference, different positions that are within the school district when we have to recruit people. So it's public money, and I understand that people feel it could be done more efficiently, but honestly, I think we do a pretty good job of collectively bargaining these contracts in a way that's fair for both sides.
Yeah, I basically don't have a whole lot to add. They are negotiated contracts with, whether it's the UEB or the BTA. The UEB is the support staff, the custodians, the bus drivers, the food service workers, or the BTA, who's the teachers and teaching assistants. I think that, and the board has a role in that, and that the superintendent comes back and discusses what's happening, but it's the superintendent and the district's attorney with the BTA leadership and their NYSET attorney, and they meet and they work it out. Both sides have a proposal and then kind of winnow it down from there. That said, so I think that process works, and I think it's worked well. That said, I think as we move forward, I think most people are aware that we're starting to experience a shortage of both teaching staff, administrators. There's just not this, you know, when I was applying for jobs, there was like 100 candidates for one position. That's not the case anymore. Especially in some of the harder sciences, tech, they can certainly go into private sector and make more money than they're going to make as a teacher. I also think the atmosphere in the school, the leadership in the school, the culture in the school, all of those things contribute to professional happiness and satisfaction. So I think it's more than the money. When we talked just a few minutes ago about administrative turnover, things like that, those are questions that people coming into the district are going to ask, or they're going to be aware of from talking to other people. So you want to make sure that you have all those other facets outside the contract that's negotiated, showing your best self, I guess, so that we are able to attract the best candidates possible, because it's going to be more and more competitive as we move forward.
Thank you. Tim, how do you think we should be supporting students who don't feel a strong sense of belonging here at Voorheesville? For example, students who don't participate in sports and clubs, and ideas about that?
Boy, I haven't thought a lot about that, quite honestly. It's a small school district that it appears that most people know each other. So I would hope that, and if somebody is not participating, is feeling that they're left out, I would hope that others would become aware of that it would be noticeable, and that we would have somebody who would tap that child on the shoulder and say, is there anything I can do to help you? Why don't you come join me? Perhaps we could be of assistance. I don't know to what extent the problems are emotional, social, problems back at home. So, you know, that's a question that probably is different for every child. depending on their circumstances. I don't have a clear answer for you on that one. I would tell you though that the mental and emotional health of our students is critical. That would be a high priority for me. As much as the educational program, because I do think that there is a lot of kids who have had mental health breakdowns. I'll be quite candid with you. I have one of 6, 2 of them have passed. One of them had a serious mental health problem. And he eventually passed away through a suicide. And it was, it's still difficult for me to talk about, but it was that sort of sense. He wasn't one of these kids who felt like he didn't belong, but these are serious circumstances that need to be addressed early on. My parents didn't know that my brother had that kind of problem. He was self-medicating and he was going off the rails all the time. They didn't know what was wrong with him. And then at age 38, he commits suicide. And that was a very, very troubling time for our family, you can imagine. And I worry about those type of kids. I do think they need to be addressed as early as possible, but you gotta be real careful wading in on that conversation. You can't assume much because every story is a different story.
I think it's really important that students have a sense of belonging. Disenfranchised students can often lead to some of the situations we talked about earlier regarding safety. I think that the easiest way to find out what they need is to ask the students. I know recently, well, it's probably a couple years now, but they started a gaming club that didn't exist before, and that attracted a bunch of kids that I would say weren't the typical sports kids or drama club kids, and it's thriving and it's growing, and they're talking to each other and recruiting other kids to that club. I think finding out what the kids need and want is important, and then seeing if we can provide the resources, even if we have to reach out to the community, because I found the community sometimes, you know, a club has to exist for a period of time to show interest before it becomes something that the district kind of takes under the umbrella of a district club. But there are other ways around that. When I was talking to a voter recently, I don't play croquet hole. I don't know how many of you do, but it's a big game, I guess. And we had the World Championship here in Voorheesville like a week ago. And one of the residents that I was talking to said, I wonder if, you know, some kids would be interested in learning how to do that. It's a whole organization. We have a bunch of people in our district that are playing this game. It's a strategy game. I don't know a whole lot about it beyond that, but I said, you should get together with your group and offer that. It doesn't necessarily have to be under the school umbrella, but I think we need to find a way to connect kids with other kids, to the best of our ability.
I don't disagree with anything that's been said. What I would add to it is look at it as the flip side of that coin is creating an environment which would then signal to kids that they are welcome and that they are included. This is why representation is so important. Diversity, equity, and inclusion is creating an environment that signals to students that this is a safe place, and that in turn will then draw them to that welcoming environment and allow them to have a sense of belonging. So I don't disagree. I think it was a monkey song, a little bit of this, a little bit of that. They have the words wrong, but it's, yes, you're going to reach out and you're going to inquire with kids is something wrong, but sometimes kids don't operate that way. Every child is different. And sometimes for other children, it may be the unspoken creation of an environment that makes them feel like they belong, that will then draw them in. And that's important as well. But I certainly don't disagree with my colleagues here about the absolute importance of social and emotional health. Because that's what schools are just as much about the academic book learning. It's that learning of humanity and how to support one another as people and as human beings.
Okay. Our final question for this evening is it's actually two questions. What is the value of transparency in a school district? And when you finish answering that, give us a final comment about anything else you'd like the voters to know before they go to this. And we're starting with that. So what's the value of transparency in a school district? And then give us your final pitch.
I think the value of the transparency is so important because it's the way to earn trust, right? And if decisions aren't made in a transparent way and communicated to whoever needs the information, then people get the sense that things are not happening sort of on the up and up, or a few key people are making decisions and other people are left outside of that. So I think whenever school district decisions are being made, we need to be very transparent. And whether that's at public board meetings, whether it's using our website, it's just important to earning the trust of the community. As far as anything the voters should know about me, as you make your decision, I don't think there's any doubt that all three of us are qualified. I think that what I bring to the table is years of experience in this school district. I know this district intimately. I've been involved in every aspect of the district except for the board. And I care deeply about this district. My own family, my children have benefited from their education here in this district. And I feel that I pledge to be accessible and to be transparent and to be ethical in all the decisions that come before me. So I appreciate your consideration and I thank you very much for coming tonight.
Certainly transparency is important. It's a hallmark of government. And whether we consider it to be in the classical sense, this is part of government. And I think that it's one of the most critical parts of government. It's one of the most local parts of government that we can be involved in order to shape our communities and to hold them up. And so, yeah, transparency in terms of what it is that we do, how it is that we're doing it, and communication, which is part of that, is extraordinarily important. And one of the other things that I would like to see is board meetings to be used, and I think this falls in the category of transparency, to create educational opportunities for the public. I attended a board meeting where they actually had an educational session on Title IX, which is much, much more than what many of us think it is. And even with my background, I learned an extraordinary amount of information. And as I sat there, I wondered, wow, it'd be great if there were more people in the community who are here to hear this, because it really wasn't like it. It's very important. And I think that in the spirit of transparency, that's something that we should strive to do with the school board, is to provide more learning opportunities for our community. As far as final words, I'm very zealous in everything that I do in life. I feel very passionately about community, about civics. And those are things that I think that we need to press upon our students. And above all, no matter what the issue is, I would certainly vow to be open, acceptable, and above all, in whatever decisions that I make and any actions that I take, I would do it with integrity. Because without my integrity, I have nothing. And part of that integrity is being completely open and honest in believing that I do think that the most important resource that we have in this school district is our staff, instructional and otherwise, who dedicate their lives to caring for our children on a daily basis. And without them, certainly this district wouldn't be the shining beacon that it is. So, and we ask for your support, and thank you so much for coming out tonight.
Thank you.
Thank you. I too am a big fan of transparency. In fact, I probably get myself in trouble because that little owl that's recording everything, I'll say things and I know that other people are looking at me like, oh, I wish you would have said that. Well, I am an honest, open person. That's who I am. Not gonna sugarcoat it. That's the way I'm gonna be. I think it's very important. And I will tell you, I do sit in on those executive sessions. I am very, very proud of how our board handles that. I used to work in school districts all around the state, and I would go to school districts where we'd go into executive session. They'd invite me in, and then they'd say, hey, just a minute. There's something we want to talk about. We'll get right to you. But that's not why we're here. They were doing this all the time. We never do that. We have, I give a lot of this to Rachel Gilker, who's our president. She makes sure that we are on task, on point. We went into executive session for X, we go into executive session only for X. And I really appreciate that honesty and transparency. If there's something that needs to be discussed publicly, we say that. This is for public discussion. It's public business, to be discussed publicly, let's do it there. So I think we do a real good job of honoring transparency at the board level. And that's the only place I operate. So I do everything I can to make sure that that's in play. And it will continue to be in play if I continue on the board. I'm sure these two folks will honor that as well. Why me? I've been on the board for 4.5 years. Been a member of the policy committee, been a member of the curriculum committee. I've been a volunteer for the backpack program and for the regional, and for the food pantry. I have, as I mentioned, facilitated those discussions during the middle school and high school's principal searches. In my capacity as a board member, there are several decisions we've made that I take real pride in the last 4 years. Number one, we brought those K-5 kids back into school, in-person instruction as soon as possible during the pandemic. That was huge. A lot of districts didn't do that. We did. I'm very proud of that. We introduced a universal pre-K program, which I would like to see expanded. We have a new early reading program I'm very proud of. We have improved the superintendent's evaluation. We have we have new school bus safety improvements. We are obviously going to improve the elementary school, and we're going to build this new transportation center. That all happened during this last 4 years, and I was a part of that. I'm very proud of have voted yes on all of those things with my fellow board members. Last thing I want to say is, sometimes we fail to recognize what a great school district we have here. Again, I had that perspective of having worked throughout the state. We have such a wonderful place here. Our reputation statewide, not just in Capital Region, statewide is excellent. Our graduation rate year after year is nearly 100%. Our class sizes, very small. Compared to a lot of other districts, we are very fortunate in that regard. We do a very good job in assigning students to the proper teacher, and assistant, the proper teacher aides, to make sure that each student has that educational program that's going to serve them best, and the staff there to serve them best. I believe in general, our schools are very safe places. Sure, we've had some recent incidences, sorry to say, but we've handled them, and we have our eye on making sure that those don't occur again. We've recruited outstanding, experienced, skillful, dedicated staff. Our budget is stable. We put new funding proposals to get forward. The community supports those. We manage our existing resources very well. And you know it and I know it, people move to Voorheesville for the schools. Happens all the time. There's people who wish they could get in here, but they can't find a house or an apartment or whatever they're looking for. And, I think that's a perspective that I'm very proud of. I'm happy to announce to people that I'm a school board member in Voorheesville, and I'd like to continue in that role. Thank you all for your support. I do appreciate this opportunity in the PTA. Thank you.
And that wraps up this evening's program. Thank you so much to Tim, Kathy, and Matt for being here and for answering many questions for us. And thank you all for attending, for the questions that you provided. Good luck to everyone. Please spread the word that this will be a recording that will be posted, and others that were not able to attend tonight can see that as well. Thank you so much and have a good evening.
Likewise. Thanks. Yeah, same to you.